What is the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. Glad you were with us. There has been a lot of concern lately about conspiracy theories and are they making their way into faith communities, into churches specifically. Today we're going to be talking about that. Lifeway Research has done some research, and we are happy to have with us via Zoom, as all our guests are now, the Executive Director of Lifeway Research, Scott McConnell. Scott, thanks for coming on once again.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you.
So you ask this question. You ask a question about are pastors hearing members of their congregation repeating conspiracy theories? And basically, I'm going to ask what you found, then I'm going to ask why you asked that question in the first place. But what did you find when you asked that question?
We found that half of pastors, 49% of Protestant pastors, frequently hear members sharing these conspiracy theories about things happening in our country. That includes some pastors that are somewhat agreeing with that, but 1 out of 8 pastors are strongly agreeing that they're hearing these things. And so almost half are also disagreeing. They're not hearing these. About a quarter of pastors strongly disagreeing. They're not hearing them at all.
Okay, so let's take the good news first. 51% of pastors say, nope, not hearing that at all. That's great. So let's put that out there. 51% say they're not hearing anything about conspiracy theories. Now shockingly, sadly, 49% are saying that they do hear this. And now the first conspiracy theory I think of is QAnon, which I'm not going to define right now. People may know about it. I would say look it up, but don't get too far into it. But are you specifically talking about QAnon, or how do you define conspiracy theories here?
So for this particular question, we did not define conspiracy theories. It's been a term that's been in the English language for well over 100 years. Only 5% of pastors said they were not sure on how to respond to this question. So they definitely had a feeling what we were talking about. We did not give any specific examples. So we were not specifically referring to QAnon, but just in general, the conspiracy theories that throughout 2020, we were hearing quite a bit about. We were curious to really understand from churches if these were also surfacing in church settings.
And what do you think? When you got that, were you surprised by that number?
Yes. Honestly, it's a pretty startling disconnect to really the mission of the church. Christian churches resolved to be places focused on truth. And when we're looking at conspiracy theories, we're talking about assumptions here of potential plots. And that's a really sharp contrast there. In one sense, it shouldn't be surprising that something that is very widespread in our culture appears in church on some level. But again, just from a mission standpoint, there's a really big disconnect here when, for 2,000 years, the mission of the church is to hand down eyewitness accounts of what Jesus taught, eyewitness accounts of Jesus's ministry, death, and even his life after he was risen from the dead. And so you've got that tradition over 2,000 years, and then suddenly we have this narrative here recently of church members sharing things that could happen. They sound possible, maybe. That's a really sharp contrast there. One is definitely a message of hope, and the other one is really based on fear.
Churches are supposed to be a place of truth and hope, and not of fear. And you're right, these conspiracy theories are they're all about fear. So how is this a threat to the church? If people if they connect these conspiracy theories with religious people, that's a threat, isn't it, to the church?
Absolutely. Church is trying to share this message of who Jesus Christ is and what he did for us. And we want people to believe that. And if Christians get the reputation of people that are not basing their thought processes on facts, on truth, but more on hearsay, that's the exact opposite kind of reputation you want to have.
So what made you ask this question? You must have been concerned. What made you go out and start, researching this?
Definitely when we see things going on in our culture and things are in our conversations as a society, we're very curious to understand to what extent that's infiltrating the church. And is it beginning to infiltrate the thinking within the church? Because as our minds go as humans, but also as Christians, our actions are going to follow. And so it's important for church leaders to be teaching on subjects where people might be going astray from where biblical teaching stands.
And there might be some who go, okay, maybe there are a couple. How did they get this information? How many churches did they really talk to? Are we talking about big churches, small churches? When you talk about Protestant, what do you specifically mean by that? I guess give us your methodology. How many did you talk to? Were they big, small? The racial diversity here?
Sure. We utilized a random sample of Protestant churches, and then we approached their senior pastor or a minister in the church to complete the survey. 1,000 surveys were completed. That includes 500 that were completed by phone and 500 that were completed online. The online surveys were only available to folks we invited that had been previously recruited by phone. Protestant includes many traditions that are different from Catholic. It includes Baptists, Adventists, Lutherans, Methodists, and more that are all in the Protestant tradition. Also includes non-denominational Christian churches, and these would be of all ethnicities.
And did you find in the data, are larger churches more likely to hear this kind of thing, less likely? Is it something you're hearing in smaller churches? What could you garner from that?
We do see that larger churches are more likely for the pastor to be hearing these. I mean, some of that is just math. If there are more minds, more mouths in a church, it's more likely a pastor will hear some of them mentioning these things. 61% of churches that have attendance of 250 plus indicated they're hearing these conspiracy theories circling frequently. We also see differences by the age of the pastor. And those pastors age 65 plus, only a third of them are hearing the theories. And that could be because they may not be on social media quite as often, or their congregation's not on social media where a lot of these are spread. One of the other big differences we see is by the ethnicity of the pastor. We did not ask the ethnicity of the congregation, but based on the ethnicity of the pastor, we see that white pastors are more likely than African-American pastors to say they're frequently hearing these conspiracy theories spread. So 50% of white pastors and 36% of African-American pastors. So it's not a large leap for us to say that these conspiracy theories are circling more often in white conservative circles rather than others.
So what do we do with this? What do we do now? You have this information. What do you do now?
Our hope would be that, this is a glance in the mirror for a church leader to see what's going on in churches like theirs. And as they hear from other pastors that, yes, these are being spread, not in every church, not by everybody, but it is happening. It's important to understand some of the dangers that are attached to it. Author Mary Jo Sharp says that there's two main reasons that people are drawn to conspiracy theories. One is the ease of understanding. As complex things occur in our society, it's really easy to say, well, so-and-so is behind this. And that kind of simplifies the entire story, and we don't have to fully understand that complex thing that's going on. But the other reason that people are drawn to conspiracy theories is it's an escape from the ordinary. It's almost like a Hollywood drama. And the person telling the story becomes the hero because they're exposing the real truth. And that's really problematic. Sharp points out that that's problematic for Christians because biblical teaching would say the hero of our story is Jesus Christ. And when suddenly you're making yourself the hero of exposing this plot, it's really a turn of events that's the opposite of what the Bible would teach. And so we would hope that the church leaders would understand the dangers and really be encouraging folks to base their conversations in truth. And, it's easy, even when you hear other people sharing them, for maybe you don't state it as fact, but you state it as a question. Could it be so-and-so behind this? Could it be this? And we start to do that almost without thinking. But it's important as Christians to be basing our beliefs on truth. And so to wait until we can find facts to base any of these arguments on. So
it stands to reason you've identified this as an issue now. I mean, you thought it might be, now you've identified it. And it sounds like you're encouraging pastors to maybe kind of take this head on, to discuss it. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to say some of this is just not right. They've got to be sensitive in the way they handle it within their own congregation. But do you feel like Lifeway would come out with resources or materials or an advisory or something to that effect here in the next year about this kind of thing?
Well, we have resources. A book by Mary Jo Sharp would be an example. It's entitled Living in Truth, Confident Conversations in a Conflicted Culture. So, by having resources like that, where a leader or just a churchgoer can dig in a little deeper and understand the issue a little better, really can give perspective in our conversations with those who might be spreading theories of this type, or just helping others in our church know how to respond when you hear them.
That is good. What's the name of that book? What is that book?
Living in Truth, Confident Conversations in a Conflicted Culture.
Fascinating. And then another thing I wanted to make sure that we hammer home. The question was, do they hear people talking about it? The question is not, do they, the pastors themselves, believe it or anything like that, right? You don't have any sense that it's that these pastors believe that.
Right. We did not ask whether the pastors believed it or if they thought, a majority of their congregation was caught up in beliefs or the spreading. It was really, is it present? Because especially through social media, it only takes a couple people in a church to be sharing these things often for it to just constantly be there in the background, in the noise. And some of our previous research shows that those with evangelical beliefs are their number one tendency when it comes to hearing something that they disagree with on social media, especially something political, is to ignore it. And so in a natural conversation, there's not anybody correcting. And obviously that can get ugly fast if they're correcting on that social media platform. But to pull somebody aside privately and to indicate what's problematic about sharing some of these conspiracy theories is definitely a wise thing that would be healthy. Because another fact is that many Christians, especially those with evangelical beliefs, tend to prefer to have people in their social media network with views just like theirs. And so they're in some respects in an echo chamber where as they share things, nobody's ever pushing back because nobody has a different point of view. And so they may be traveling along, not really ever having somebody checked some of these theories that they've heard over and over again. And so, as Christians, it's important for us to lovingly correct. And the Bible would say to do that privately, to begin that as a private conversation. And that's something that would definitely help many congregations.
I'm looking here at a quote, and I believe it's in the book that you were talking about. Before Christians share anything in person or on social media, they should first ask, how will this affect my ability to share the good news of Jesus Christ? And that's why if you're sharing something about a conspiracy theory, it could affect your ability to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Is that right?
Absolutely. When the message of Jesus Christ, what he has done for us, they not only are evaluating that message, they're evaluating the person who's sharing it with them, that messenger. And so, the things we do in our relationships and our contacts with people ahead of time paves the way one way or the other for them to either be willing to listen to that message and consider it, or to reject it really pretty quickly if we have laid a foundation that we do a lot of thinking based on unreliable sources.
You were on before and you talked about civility being on the decline and some other things. So we're going to take a break now, and I want to ask about some other things you have looked into. So we'll take a break, be back right after this.